Good morning, viewers, and welcome to the Economy and Politics Show, where we continue our conversation on politics, policy, and investment as it affects the Nigerian populace. Today, we'll focus on the subnationals on this Thursday morning, August 27, 2020. And the subnational includes states across the country. We'll be looking at subnationals, digital economy, and development. And with me to lead this conversation is Professor Akpan Ekpo, an economist, who also is the chairman of the Akwa Ibom State Post-COVID-19 Economic Recovery Committee. Nice to have you on the show, Prof.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes. And first, I'd just like you to react to the big story that occurred this week on Monday, Nigeria's economic growth for second quarter. According to National Bureau of Statistics, showed that the economy contracted by minus 6.61%. That's the contraction, minus 6.1%. And how will this affect states, even as they grapple with the issues of revenue and unemployment in these times?
Well, thank you very much. The contraction was very deep. We knew that the economy would contract, but not at that rate of minus 0.6% or 0.61%. Because even the World Bank and the IMF and Nigerian economies did forecast lower rate. But don't forget that technically, the economy is not yet in a recession. We need 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth to be in a recession, technically. Yeah. Before then, we are still in a stagflation. But there's no doubt, I know that the next quarter figures should also be minus. We enter recession. But you see, the states will be affected because even though we have 36 states and 1 FCT and so on and 34 local governments, we only have one economy. We have one economy. So once the wider economy has problems, it will filter to the subnational governments, the states, and the local governments. What this means is that the states have to be much more innovative on how they carry on their business. You know, in Nigeria, all the states, except 2 or 3, depend on the federal government for revenue allocation. The study I did a few years ago for the UNDP showed that if states do not receive federal allocation, only about 2 states then can survive. I can recall only Lagos State and Kano, maybe now 1 more. So you see, it is serious. So that means states must be very, very innovative. On that about solving their problems. They can't depend on the federal government. First, federal government itself has its own problems. All revenue, by my definition, is a windfall. You cannot plan an economy with the sort of revenue you have no control over. What we call in economics an exogenous source of revenue outside your control. Oil price is volatile, uncertain. Even the output you have to produce is determined by a cartel called OPEC. So you can't plan a system with that. So if you find such money, it's a windfall and use that. So states must be innovative. What can states do to solve some of the problems? For the South states, for example, they should think of an economy without oil. An economy
beyond oil.
Yeah, beyond oil. In other words, oil is important, but don't make it as if it's a sacrosanct. When you have other resources, okay? They have agri products and its entire value chain. And you know, studies have shown that an economy can industrialize via agriculture. Yeah. And agri products are renewable, okay, unlike oil or solid minerals. So if you think of enhancing the agri sector, think of the IT sector, okay? A lot of the states in the South, think of tourism, think of building the transport sector, like Akwa State is doing now, the Ibom Air, but know when to exit as a government. So there are a lot of things. In the northern part of the country, where they say they have solid minerals, it will be the same problem as oil. Because if you don't refine those minerals, okay, you fall in the same trap like oil, what I call mundane diversification. Just export the oil, the crude. But every state in Nigeria has a resource. What's the resource? Human beings. So
human capital.
Once they can think and you empower them, and then you can move forward. So we have to reduce dependence. And then some national governments should begin to practice what I have described as competitive federalism. Competitive.
Can you expand on that, Prof? Competitive federalism.
National governments should compete among themselves, okay, for better efficiency. So that if I live in a Ibom state and I like what happened in Lagos State, I can move to Lagos State. We call it voting with your feet. You know, when you compete, people can move, and then others will now copy from those that are doing very well. For example, I was impressed when I went to the World Bank and I saw that the World Bank was using Lagos State taxing policy as an example for entire Africa. So you have competitive, not just wait for money from the center, because the money will dry up someday. Yes.
Then, Prof, that brings me to a very big question in Nigeria. Some of your colleagues have talked about it, the issue of fiscal federalism. They need to review federal allocation principle in terms of revenue distribution, and also the need to restructure the economy based on resources. So, for example, like you talked about the North, solid minerals, and South, beyond oil. Exclusive list at the federal level has more responsibilities, which the advocates are saying should go to the concurrent list so that states can also unlock their potentials and drive their economies. What are your thoughts around this whole conversation?
Definitely, there's need to review the allocation formula. If I let me surprise you, a few years ago, where I worked, we did a study. We won a federal government contract, Revenue Commission, to do a study on reviewing the revenue formula for the entire country. It was a major study. We finished the report, gave to the commission, and unfortunately, before President Jonathan left office, nothing happened. Where we addressed some issues you are talking about, where there was a lot of disagreement as to the variables that enter the formula. Okay, but the point, the main issue is that even if you review the formula in favor of states and local government, it doesn't resolve the problem of the fact that states have to mobilize their own revenue and reduce dependence on the federal government. For example, if states build their own economies very well, by default, the system will be restructured. For example, Lagos State does not care how much they get every month from the center. Okay? And Lagos State owes
strong internal generated revenue base.
They owe a lot of debt, but they can pay for those debts. So they have strong IGR. Okay? What are we saying? The entire Southwest and Lagos was one time governed by, according to history, Chief Obafemi
Awolowo, yes, the former premier.
At that time, regions were sending money to the center. So if we develop that, if you build your states, by default, system will be restructured. The South will consider what they are doing. The middle belt will consider in the food basket, and so on and so forth. At some point, the federal government say we'll be getting worried. They become weak. So that list should be revised. I agree. To put everything in the exclusive list does not make sense. Once you revise that and move them to concurrent list, then we need to look at that formula again. And that our work did that, but I don't want to go into detail because the work was to move from the presidency to the House of Assembly, where the formula would then be revised. So I was shocked when, I think some months ago, they were talking about another review. When just 3 years ago, the federal government spent almost 90 million in that exercise. Where I worked, YFM had the contract, and the thing is still there. So there's need for a review. Yes.
All right, Prof. Let's take a breather, and when we return, we will now look at the digital economy aspect of this conversation. Quite interesting conversations, even to hear your involvement in trying to see how we can revisit and drive a fiscal federal nation.
When we first met, the first question I asked was,
where have you been all my life?
Since then, we have taken every step together.
Especially when the kids were schooling abroad. Oh, how we made it through those years.
When we shared the same passion,
the same drive,
and the same vision to succeed. Let's help you achieve your visions and aspirations, milestone by milestone. FCMB, my bank and I.
Welcome back, and let's continue this conversation. Very interesting one with Professor Akpan Ekpo, an economist and chairman for Akwa Ibom State post-COVID-19 Economic Recovery Committee. The digital economy, Prof, is a major driver for nations today. As we can look at the United States of America, where I know you were based and you lectured in, we've seen companies like Apple, Amazon, Facebook drive the economy even amidst the pandemic. And let's look at your current role as the chairman of the Akwa Ibom State post-COVID-19 Economic Recovery Committee. Recently, you had some engagements with Main One and looking at how to drive digital economy in Akwa Ibom State. So based on that interaction experience, how can states also look at unlocking the digital economy to address the issue of jobs and development, which is staring all the states in the face now?
Well, thank you very much. Good question. As I said, once you see oil as non-renewable, the next place to go is the IT, what you call digital economy. And you're right, developed countries like the US, Japan, UK, China have made a lot of strides through the digital economy. Well, I don't know about other states, but you remember Akwa Ibom State years ago, one of the governors, I think Governor Atta, decided to have a science and
technology park.
Park. And they sent a lot of Akwa Ibom people to Canada to study in different areas of the ICT. And they were to come back, work in the park, and after 2 years, they can now be on their own. If that had developed, that could have been the Silicon Valley of the state, and maybe the nation. That didn't happen. But luckily, the present governor, Deacon Emmanuel, has now committed to revamp the IT project, Science and Tech Park. I think he's working on that. And that is the way to go. That will generate a lot of employment of the youths, and the youths are very, very innovative. In fact, if you go to Akwa Ibom State today, you'll be amazed that a lot of the youths are doing these things on their own, surprisingly. So with the ICT or IT, the digital economy, you have a lot of jobs created and the different backward and forward linkages. For example, you mentioned Main One. The state is engaged with Main One to tap from the optic fiber that they are bringing in from Cameroon across the state to other states. So that's the way to go. And you're going to have e-governance, e of everything. Okay. So people can even stay in their home, in their homes, and be engaged in several activities that will generate jobs and also bring revenue to the government. So Akwa Ibom State, in its effort to now revitalize the Science and Tech Park, I think is making progress, and I hope that the governor will be on track to make that a reality. Yes.
And Prof, also based on your influence, you can also push for the need for Akwa Ibom State to join the 3 states so far, Ekiti, Kwara, and Kaduna, who have reduced the right-of-way charges to enable more investments in broadband. For example, recently I heard on the show Mr. Akin Oyebode of Ekiti State, who said through their reduction of the right-of-way charges, they're able to attract 2 telco companies to lay over 500 and 600 kilometer fiber optic to drive the digital economy. So I believe that with this step already taken, there'll be opportunities for that.
The state will do that. They don't even need my influence, because luckily the SSD is an IT man.
Okay, Mr.
Emmanuel in the digital economy. So definitely that will be done. Yes.
Definitely.
If already on board. Yeah.
Okay, looking forward to that. And let's look at a territory that is yours. I mean, economic development and planning. You've been involved in this for over 3 decades. We've seen a lot in the national level, but at the state level, there seems to be challenges in having sustainable economic development plans, programs that drives and anchors growth and development for states, particularly integrating digital technology as a strategy too. And remember that in the period of the administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo, we had the SEEDS, the State Economic Development Scheme, SEEDS then, which I know you were also involved in at the advisory role. So in terms of policy framework, do you agree that there's need for states to really drive this sustainably, irrespective of which government comes into power, and integrates digital technology as a strategy too?
Yeah, definitely. At the federal level, there is a process. There's now an attempt to have a development plan, 5 years, and then the the Agenda 2050, and that involves it's all part of the digital economy. And the federal government has advised, because they cannot force states, because the nature of our they've advised states to do the same. But I can speak a little bit about Akwa Ibom, because the state governor has, in principle, approved that there's need for a 5-year development plan for Akwa Ibom State, and there's also for a 30-year development plan, which will be based on the digital economy framework. Okay, it approved that in principle. I think if work will soon commence, and you know that, and it's a major development, because it's saying that you plan the state for sustainable development and for balanced areas, balanced development of all areas of the state. Not when you are a councillor or a politician, you just build your own area and go away. This will be allowed for all areas of the state to be developed. Okay, and you need that. You need a 5-year and maybe a longer term. The problem is that once a governor or a government leaves, a new government comes and may truncate it. So the idea is that for all states, if you have a good plan like that, take to the House of Assembly, let it become law.
On it.
Yeah. Yes, become law, and then make a proviso that if there are shocks in the economy, it can be fine-tuned, but that the fundamentals, the essentials will remain the same. That has been the problem in Nigeria's planning. But now, with the digital economy, if you put it into law, it will be seen. I mean, going forward, we will now build an economy that is sustainable. There will be sustainable growth, because growth you can grow, but if not sustainable for a long time, you cannot develop. So with the states imbibing the digital economy framework, that is hope. We have to keep hope alive. So,
very well.
So I think
we have to really keep hope alive. Yes,
that's the way to go. Yes.
Yeah. And based on your experience too, I mean, states need to drive competitiveness. You just talked about competitive federalism. That means we need to look at industrialization and attracting investments, particularly post-pandemic. I remember your stint when you were the chairman of Akwa Ibom State Investment Promotion Council, Akipok, under the administration of Governor Victor Atta in Akwa Ibom State. That was a fourth republic taking shape and states looking at attracting investments. If you could share a bit of your experience and the challenges you faced then, and what states can learn from that and improve on, even particularly now that you chair the post-recovery committee for the states. How can states really ensure that their environment is conducive to attract investments? What laws need to be made? Some states are looking at PPP laws, reforming them, and all that. What are those steps that should be taken in this period?
Well, thank you very much. The Akipok, now named Akikop, was put in place to attract investment. You're right. But we discovered that there are a lot of constraints in Nigeria, because when you say Akwa Ibom State, for example, when you go outside to attract investment, the foreign investors don't see the state as different from Nigeria. So they will raise all the challenges facing Nigeria, whether it's in the northeast or northwest or south. So you have to be able to show that your state, like when we're in Akipok, Akwa Ibom State is different, and it's a Herculean task to show that Akwa Ibom State is different. And then you go to Akwa Ibom State, you get what you want. And that's why, for example, at that time, we had a constraint of communication. And that's one reason why the Attacks Association invested in the GSM, the EcoNet, V-Mobile network to ease communication. That was a major problem. Then it will surprise you that a lot of times to make progress at the state level, you find that there are a lot of bottlenecks from the federal government. There are a lot of issues where you have to go to the center to get approval, to get waivers, to make progress. So we advocate that if you restructure and allow states to have more economic freedom to implement their own policies, it will be better. Remember Crossriver State and Tinapa?
Yes.
Part of why Tinapa, the problem was that a lot of things had to come from the federal government, a lot of the approval and stuff. And with our national democracy, if you're not in line with the party at the center, they create bottlenecks for you to make progress. But having said that, for Akwa Ibom, we had a problem in the sense that Akwa Ibom State for years has been known as a civil service state.
Civil service state, yeah.
They are risk adverse. They don't take risks. Because if you don't take risks, you can't make progress. So first of all, you have to conquer that fear, which we try to do. But I think the present government of the state, through its Agriculture and other channels, is trying to attract investment again to the state for what I've seen, and have put a lot of resources in that direction. For example, people will be surprised. The Ibom Air is a major development.
In the aviation space.
Yeah. So people will come to Lagos and say your next stop will be Akwa Ibom, and it's reliable. It's just that you should know when to exit. So if you have a good infrastructure, peace in the state, for example, no matter what they say, I think Governor Odom has restored peace to the state. If you have peace, some security, you may be able to attract investors. I say you may be able, because outsiders see the state as part of Nigeria. Huh? So you must convince them that you are different, and it's not an easy thing. But I think most states are doing their best, including Akwa Ibom State.
I'm understanding you better now, Prof, because when you look at the quarterly capital importation report that comes for Nigeria, published by National Bureau of Statistics, it keeps showing Lagos as the major one. So hopefully, with steps like this from Akwa Ibom, and we're seeing things in Kaduna State, Ekiti, Anambra, and across, we should begin to see other states attract more investments that can unlock the pressure on Lagos, and also ensure that we see more people go to other parts of the country.
Yes, and then with the new oil and gas free zone.
Yes, if you can give some a 1 minute insight into that. Just sort of about
I don't have major insight, but I just know that if it comes to fruition, it will open up the streets for major development, and then for employment
opportunities
and so on and so forth. So it's a major development, because Lagos should not be the only center.
Definitely,
it's getting crowded. We have to move to. As I said, you vote with your feet. If you is okay, people move to you or or anywhere.
Yes, and
have opportunities to make a living and and create jobs. Yes.
Yes, in the words of Professor Chukwuma Solu, the former Central Bank of Nigeria governor, we need 6 more super cities in Nigeria like that are like Lagos. We can't concentrate on one.
My very good friend, he has what they call big ideas. So he's right.
Yes.
6 or more of those centers.
Yes, it is. Yeah. So Prof, when we look at the growth scenarios for Nigeria, considering the fact that all the analysts, including you, believe now that we are heading for a recession, what can be done to address the current state of stagflation in the country, which also has its effect on the nation? Stagflation basically is when you have high unemployment, high inflation coupled with slow growth, and now we're talking of a contraction and then a recession.
Yes, very sad situation, because first of all, as you say, we're in stagflation. We enter a recession. Recession is of a special type. It affects both the demand and supply side of the economy. Very, very unusual, but also very challenging because of the shutdown of supply chain. So we need both fiscal and what I call investment social policies. It means that government has, like yesterday, invest heavily on infrastructure to have a right environment and to generate jobs. Okay. In fact, before the pandemic, if you look at data, household consumption was declining.
Yeah.
Investment was also declining. Okay. So that means that the aggregate demand side of the economy and the supply side were being affected. How do you now do that? In this COVID-19, government has to provide stimulus packages to households and their families. How do you do that? It's a big challenge. And that's why the issue of data comes in. You see, people have lost their jobs. Okay. So they need purchasing power. They need money to buy goods and services, right? How do you do that? You find a way to ensure that you give them some funding, some leverage for them to survive. When they say that in America, after the pandemic, household consumption increased. There's a reason for that, because they had a stimulus. So because they had a stimulus, people went in and even bought things more than what they should have bought when there was no pandemic. You get it. So once we are building a market economy, we have to make allowance for providing those type of things, palliatives to households and their families, incentives to firms to want to stay on and still become the engine of growth. So government has to do that. Give packages, give palliatives, and so on and so forth. You give tax, but they have to do it, and then build infrastructure. For example, pandemic has shown the nakedness of our health infrastructure. Okay, if you put money into that, okay, it will enhance growth. If you go to the airports now, all the private jets are parked there in large number. They can't go anywhere. They used to go, they have headache, they fly abroad. So now, if you build that infrastructure health, you will now keep that money in the country, and you also create jobs. So we need to build health infrastructure. To do that also, because you have to also build capacity for those people to manage that health infrastructure. And I'm using health as an example. So, so government has to do business as the private sector. Because when an economy is in recession, to be honest, private sector has no solution. They will tell you that they don't have. It is government that will jumpstart everything and make sure that the recession is minimized. And let me say one thing. Recessions come and go, and no two of them are alike. And once you run a market economy, a capitalist market economy, you cannot escape from a recession. Only you can, if you manage the economy well, you can reduce or minimize the adverse effects of that recession. You get my point. For example, now, if we have power supply in Nigeria for even 18 hours a week, and companies can run 2 shifts, you will generate employment, okay? And then you minimize the supply side effect of inflation. But where your power supply is epileptic, you worsen the recession, okay? So for us, we're having sluggish growth, okay? Making some progress, pandemic stepped in to worsen the situation. So now government has to double its efforts in terms of driving
growth and stability.
To invest. And don't forget that private sector will invest if they have the right environment. They will invest, they will grow the economy, but they have different objectives. And there's nothing wrong with it. The objective is to make profit, which is there's nothing wrong. So private sector is an engine of growth, but not necessarily an engine of development. The development comes in indirectly. It is the government that pursues development, okay? That says, what is happening to employment? What is happening to education? What is happening to housing? What is happening to gender imbalance? It is the government that addresses those issues. Private sector will do that indirectly. Once they're not making profit, once the rate of profit is declining, they will leave the business, no matter what government says. And nothing wrong, that's a fundamental law. But we need both of them.
That ties into your development state model.
Yeah, so we need government and private sector to collaborate and move the economy forward. Yes, the development state model is the way to go. The way to go. Where government sees development as priority.
Yes. Okay, Prof, we'll go on a final breather, and then when we return, we'll wrap up in terms of the way forward for states. What should be the top 3 priorities going forward in developing the economy?
Thank you.
When we first met, the first question I asked was,
where have you been all my life?
Since then, we have taken every step together.
Especially when the kids were schooling abroad. Oh, how we made it through those years.
When we shared the same passion,
The same drive.
and the same vision to succeed. Let's help you achieve your visions and aspirations, milestone by milestone. FCMB, my bank and I.
Welcome back. And as we wrap up this interesting conversation on subnationals, digital economy, and development, I have Prof to speak to the way forward for states. And Prof, I guess you're also aware that the federal government talked about some states that are already solvent in terms of they can't really manage things the way they would at the moment, showing you that states are really facing challenges. So for those states, those 5 states have been outlined as solvent, and then also other states in the country, what should be the way forward in terms of managing the challenges of declining revenue, declining FAC, and still driving growth and development and addressing issues like unemployment?
Thank you very much. unfortunately, as you are aware in Nigeria, states were not created based on viability. They were created for other reasons. That's why we're having these problems. Okay.
Okay.
Viability will have fewer states. But I think what they should do now is to prioritize projects. Okay. A lot of states had several projects. Some were just elephant projects. Some were political projects. They now have to prioritize, and states be strict on projects that will generate jobs. Okay. If any project is 70% or near completion, that is, it remains 30% for completion, and they have economic value. Those are the projects they should tackle. They should complete. We call that in economics expenditure switching. Okay, they have to now leave frivolous projects and prioritize projects. That's one. Then they have to reduce their budgets. Okay, reduce budgets, and that is tall order because most Nigerian states the cost of governance is too high. They have to reduce the cost of governance. They have to reduce that. Okay, they have to save resources, and then they have to enhance IGR. How do you do that? If you look at Lagos State, all Nigerian states have a very vibrant informal sector. In fact, the World Bank says that the Nigerian economy 2/3 is informal. The what we call the underground economy. You think of innovative ways of taxing that sector because a lot of people who should be in the tax net hide all what they have in that sector. Okay, you should try and go to Lagos or Kano and see how they tax the informal sector to generate more IGR or what we call domestic resource mobilization. Those areas are very crucial. Then, if they can do that, then they should move towards what we discussed earlier, this issue of IT or ICT. Those will be the priorities. And government should be lean and avoid wastages. They should lead by example because these are the new normal. It's no longer be flamboyant anymore. Okay. That's how, yes. And as I said, every state has a resource, human beings. Put them together, they will think of ways of doing things. Okay. There are countries in the world that don't have resource and they're making it like Japan, you know.
The human capital development investments is also very key.
Human capital is very, yes, very crucial.
Well, Prof, it's been really nice having this conversation with you. And I can remember prior to becoming a Prof, you were a chairman of Calabar Municipal Council.
That was years back when we run the Calabar Municipal.
So in 30 seconds, how can local governments really thrive in this period? Just 30 seconds.
It's very.
That was in the military era, but
yes, it was a military era. It's very tough. But local governments should look at what they have in their locality and see how they can maximize those resources. It's tough because local government themselves depend on the center and the state. And most states don't pay statutory allocation to local governments. So because the political environment, local governments have become also politically charged. They don't do anything. They don't get their allocation and waste it. It's unfortunate that if I have my view, my own perception, local government should not politicize. They should send seasoned administrators to run local governments. They will run it better than these politicians. They don't do anything. They don't get allocation and pay the money. So for me, I think the people at local government level should make sure that the leaders at that level perform. That's because they are very close to the people.
Yeah, the grassroots.
If they perform well and build their local areas, you reduce the movement to states and to Lagos. But because they're not doing much, that's why you find this movement. So I think that's another area where we should focus on. But that's for another day because it needs a lot of.
That's for another day, yes. Thank you very much, Prof. I mean, your suggestions are very genuine, and I've taken note of the need for states to prioritize projects, the need for states to ensure that they deepen their IGR, the need for states to also reduce the cost of governance and also invest in human capital development, drive the digital economy, and the big question of local government autonomy, which is very critical. Having experts like people like you, having PhD at that time, sharing key local governments like that, helping to transform the local government system. Thank you once again Professor Akpan Ekpo, economist and chairman of Akwa State post-COVID-19 Economic Recovery Committee for the time, and sharing your thoughts around subnationals, digital economy, and development. I hope to have you subsequently to discuss around the economy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. And that will be all for Economy and Politics show today. You can join our website
www.proshange.com to watch our videos with their news reports and analysis. Stay tuned. 10 a.m. we'll have the market review where we'll look at the financial and capital markets and how it affects our economy. To come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.